Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on Happy RC Flyer here on YouTube. Today is Tools and Tips Tuesday, and today we have another nifty tip for you. It's how to set up wireless buddy box on your Spectrum transmitters. As you can see, we have the NX10 by Spectrum and we have the DXS by Spectrum, and we're going to be demonstrating how to set up wireless buddy box, and we'll be using this Aero Scout. A lot of you guys are familiar with this. This has been an old trusty trainer plane. And there's a lot of reasons why this is a good trainer plane. It's got the propeller and the motor in the back, so I shouldn't say if you go in, but when you go in nose first, at least all that's in the back. They do tend to have a little bit of weak nose gear, so that is something you want to watch out for, but it's a good trainer in a lot of ways. It's a high wing, it's a tricycle gear. I know a lot of guys say that, well, maybe you should start people on the tail dragger, but I like tricycle gear. We have a little bit of winds today. You guys can't see the windsock, probably it's not in the camera frame, but there's a little bit of winds and it's kind of shifting around from time to time. So tricycle gear is always easier when you have a little bit of wind involved. Doesn't kick you around as much as it does with a tail dragger. Doesn't tend to make you lean and tip and stuff. But anyway, whatever plane that you're planning on using to use as a trainer plane to train a family member or a friend, this setup is going to be all the same as long as you have the Spectrum radios. I will note out right off the bat that you do need a computer radio for this process. There's probably a way that you can connect to DXS radios, but what I'll be demonstrating today is how to set it up if you have one computer radio. Of course, I'll be using the NX10, but it doesn't have to be an NX10. Most of your Spectrum radios are going to be the same. There'll be a few things that are exclusive just to the NX radios or the newer firmware, and we'll get into that a little bit later on. If you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing. Most of my viewers are not subscribed, and subscribing helps the channel grow. We're here to help grow the hobby and keep your interest up in RC. If you like that unsponsored perspective on things, I don't make any money on the videos, I don't make any money on the products, I just do it as a hobbyist, and if you like that perspective, then this is the right channel for you. Don't forget to subscribe. Turn on the bell icon if you'd like to get notified of future videos when I upload future content. Drop a comment or a question if you have one, whether it's about this setup, this process that we'll be talking about today and the discussion of the video today, or anything related to RC. And I don't have all the answers, but there are a lot of people that hang around the comment section, and that's what I think is cool about the RC hobby, is the RC community and how we all just try to help out each other. And so if we don't have the answer, then we'll help you find the answer. So if you have a question, comment, drop it in the comment section. Hit the like button at the end of the video if you like the video, and share it with a friend that you think might enjoy it. So let's get into it. As I mentioned already, we'll be using the Spectrum NX10 and also the DXS radio. Just a quick note that there are some features of the DXS radio that are not in the DXE. So if you're wondering what the difference is about the E and the S, the S is supposed to be the smart one, hence the S, DXS. And it has some other features that are not in the E version, I think like telemetry and some of those things. And now it's not going to have all the telemetry that a computer radio is going to have. You're not going to have the whole computer screen readout, but there is some telemetry, and you'll find that in the illuminator buttons, or not the buttons, the illuminator LEDs on the top. So maybe that's for another video, but let's get into it. So we have this plane set up. I will say that you do need to make sure that your master radio or your instructor radio is the computer radio. So if you buy this as a ready-to-fly kit, and I think now, this is an older version, but now, actually I think this is the Aero Scout 2 or Aero Scout S2 or something like that, was the later version. It's just been kind of rough and it's older. It's been older. I bought it used, bought it secondhand. But all these newer ready-to-fly kits will come with the DXS. The previous versions came with the DXEs, and then when they went to Smart and started adding telemetry and stuff like that, they started coming out with the DXS. So that's the difference there. And all the DXS will come out with the newer ready-to-fly combos. So you probably bought this as a kit, probably. Maybe you got it secondhand, but if you buy it new, this radio will come with it. I think you might have to buy the battery and the charger separately. I'm not sure, because of the FAA regulations here in the U.S. They've changed some of that as far as what they can include in what's considered a ready-to-fly kit. Unless they're going to include a remote ID unit, then they can't include actually everything to fly. They have to leave something like the battery or something silly out. So if you have an opinion on that, you're welcome to share it in the comment section. I'm not really in favor of all of that. we'll be flying at a FRIA site today, which means it's a recognized flying area, so we don't have to have a remote ID unit in the airplane. I don't even know if I'll get to fly the airplane on video. I'm mostly going to be setting it up, but if you do share your opinion on that, just keep it clean in the comment section. And if you do use strong language, your comment might be deleted, but don't take that personal. I just try to keep it family friendly, and I'm a Christian, so I don't like to use strong language myself, and I don't like to see it on the channel. So anyway, just don't take it personal if I end up deleting a comment because of strong language. Feel free to edit that. This radio will come with this plane, and it might come already bound up, or maybe you've bound it up and you've been kind of tinkering around making sure everything is set up. In this process, you're going to want to make sure that your instructor radio is the one that's bound to the aircraft. So this is the NX10, this will be the instructor radio, this is going to be the student radio. So even though the DXS comes with it, we're going to set that up as the student controller, and this is going to be the instructor or the master controller. So you want to bind that to this. Just a quick overview on the whole process. We're going to bind this, the master controller or the instructor controller, to the airplane. We want to make sure that everything is set up. We want to make sure that SAFE is functioning correctly. We want to make sure that all the control surfaces are moving in the correct direction. We want to make sure that we have throttle cut set up, so in case we bump the throttle, it's not going to take off on us or hurt anybody. That's another reason why I like this plane, because the prop is in the back, less likely to hit anybody if it does start rolling forward. So we're going to set all of that up. We're going to make sure everything is functioning properly. We're going to make sure everything is trimmed out, and then we're going to connect it to the DXS radio, and then at that point I'll show you more on how to set it up as the instructor and bind it up as the wireless bind. So anyway, we have our battery in here, which this takes a 3S 2200, kind of a tighter fit in there, but we're going to go ahead and make sure that we have all this bound up. And I actually already have this bound up to this radio. I was doing this off camera to make sure this plane was functioning correctly, because I bought this secondhand, and anytime you buy a plane secondhand, even from a friend, you just never know if it's going to work or not. Things do fail and things happen, but I did bind this up already. I forgot to bring with me a bind plug, so I already have this bound up to this radio. And so normally what we would do is we're going to bind it up. So we'll pretend that we're doing the bind process. I'm going to turn my radio on, and then you're going to go through the bind process, which in this case, if you want to set it up with SAFE, you will insert the bind plug, you will plug the plane in to the battery, and after the receiver power is up, you will unhook the bind plug, and that will bind it or set it up in SAFE always mode. And so if you want to have SAFE set up, if you want SAFE set up on a switch, then you need to bind it in SAFE always mode. So the way you do that is put the bind plug in, power up the plane, and then pull the bind plug out. And then after the bind plug is pulled out, then you put your transmitter or controller in bind mode, and then connect it to the airplane. So that process has already been set up, and because I forgot to bring a bind plug with me to film, we're not going to do that process over again. So just assume that that has already been done. It's already been set up. I'm going to go ahead and power it up. We want to make sure it's on a level surface. We have a slight angle a little bit here on the table. Some of the boards are uneven. That's not really a big deal, but you do want to make sure that it's fairly level, because that is going to help set your gyro. So when you do activate SAFE, it's going to fly nice and level. If you're leaning up a little bit when you bind it up and set up your gyro, initialize it and set it up for the flight, it's going to calibrate to that position. And then when you go to fly in that direction and you pop it in SAFE, it's going to stabilize, because that's what it thinks is level. And then if you turn around and you're flying the other direction, you put it in SAFE, it's going to tend to turn down. So guys that have tail dragger planes, that's a common issue that I've helped some people with tail draggers. So just keep that in mind when you initialize a plane that has a gyro in it. Make sure you want it to be on a nice level surface, as level as you can. Doesn't have to be perfect, but enough to where when it's flying, it's going to be flying level. So all right, we've got everything set up here. I'm going to show you that right is left, right is right, left is left. I'm doing that backwards because it's in reverse here for me at the elevator. So we got that working correctly. We have this working correctly. And don't just, I see a lot of guys do like pre-flight inspections, and a lot of guys will just grab the stick and they're just checking control surfaces. And there's nothing wrong with checking control surfaces, but it's very important, especially before your initial flight, that you make sure that it's functioning the proper direction. So right when we put the stick this direction, it's going to make the plane bank and roll that way. Vice versa. The elevator, pull the stick back, it's going to make the plane climb up, so we know that's correct. And your rudder is pretty self-explanatory. It's just going to move in the direction of the stick. Okay, now it's time to test out the throttle. And we already have throttle cut set up. So there's that. There is another separate video on the channel if you're not sure how to set up throttle cut. Maybe I'll put that, link that in the video description at the bottom of the video if you need instructions on how to set up throttle cut. We've already set up throttle cut on the switch back here. This is called switch H. So that's just the one I normally set it up on. And so there it is. So when throttle cut's on, doesn't matter where you put the throttle. We also have safe already set up, and I kind of explained a little bit about how to do the process. Maybe I'll do a separate video on how to set up safe on a switch, but we have safe on a switch, and so you can see that safe is trying to correct right and left, and then the elevator, you can see that. So we have safe, I believe it's on this switch, which is B.
Flight mode 2.
And you can hear I've got the volume turned up so you can hear that the flight mode is turning. Now AS3X is still trying to help level, or trying to help smooth out the flight. It's assuming it's getting tossed around in the wind, and you can see the flaps moving, or the control surface is moving for that. But
Flight mode 1.
when we put it in safe,
Flight mode 2.
you can
Flight
see
mode
safe
1. Flight
is
mode
activated.
2. Flight mode 2.
So it's already set up. So it's very important if you want safe to be activated, and a lot of guys tell me, like, I don't want to mess with safe, I don't do safe. There's nothing wrong with using safe. There's nothing wrong with not using safe. Safe is just a feature. It helps a lot of people get into flying and learn to fly that don't have an instructor. And so people say, well, I learned to fly without safe. And myself, Happy RC Flyer, I learned to fly without safe. But I use safe in my airplanes now. It's nice if I'm flying around and I need to wipe sweat out of my eyes, or a bug or something gets in my eye, I like to have that. If I want to hand it over to my wife or somebody else that doesn't fly a whole lot, and they just like that extra bit of cushion on there, you know, just to know that they're not going to accidentally put it in the ground, then I can kick safe on and hand it off. So nothing wrong with using it, nothing wrong with not using it. It's a feature. If you want to use that feature, use the feature. If you don't use it. It doesn't bother me one way or the other. But if you want it to be used as the instructor controller or as the student controller, then you want to make sure you have all of that set up in the instructor radio before we go any further. So I think at this point I'll get the camera adjusted so you'll be able to see a little more about what's going on here. So for this step, we're going to disconnect the airplane. We don't need the airplane connected in. We just wanted to make sure that it was initially bound up to the instructor transmitter. And then after you have that process done and you have all the control surfaces set correctly, you have the trims trimmed out the way they should be, then you want to cut power to your airplane or your aircraft. And then we move to the next process, and that is binding the two transmitters together, the instructor transmitter and the student transmitter. Okay guys, here we are. This is the NX10, as you've seen already. And how we're going to go into the setting for the trainer setting is we're going to press the roller dial. We're going to go all the way down. The second one, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to turn the volume down. Oops. We'll just turn the volume down for right now because that's really loud. Okay, we're going to go all the way down in the menu setting. Oops, not in the display. In the menu setting, all the way, I think it's like the second or third one up. You can see there it says System Setup. We're going to select that. And yes, we're sure we want to go to the System Setup. We don't have the aircraft connected. And we're going to scroll down. I think it's like number 16 or something. It's Trainer. We're going to go to Trainer. And then there's different options here. There's 3 different options, and this is just visible on the newer software. So I don't think this has the latest software, so this might be like one version old. But with the NX software, it's going to look a little different than some of your other computer radios. And so we have wired trainer, wireless trainer, and then trainer alerts. And maybe we'll get more into that in some other videos, explain more of the details if there's interest. But you guys are also welcome to explore some of those settings. So we're going to go to wireless trainer. And here we have a whole plethora of options. And these options look like little electronic dip switches. And the purpose of these are that you can enable and disable different channels on the student's controller. So say for example, let's see, well, here's an example. I have it set up. This is if you have the arrows, if you have it, the box is up or towards the upward position, then that means that the student can control those settings. If it's downward, that means only the instructor can control those settings. Hence it says student on top and instructor on the bottom. So you can see here, throttle, we want them to be able to control the throttle. We want them to be able to control the ailerons, the elevator, and the rudder. What I did turn off right here, and it's something that you guys might use or might not, but if you're training someone and you're using Safe Select, then it's going to be naturally, it's going to automatically set up itself to the gear channel, and I have turned the gear channel to where only the instructor can activate that. So I'm the only one that can, the instructor controller or transmitter is the only one that can change that function. So if I put it in safe and I give it to the student, they can't accidentally take it out of safe by accident. So it gives you a little more peace of mind. And you can just scroll down through there and I can change that. And I can give them access to turn safe on and off. So I just have that turned off right now. All these other ones are turned on, and we're not going to be using all those other channels. So down here at the very bottom, it says switch. Switch is going to be the switch that you use to determine whether the student has control or the instructor. And so a lot of people will put it on the bind, or I think we would call it the bind switch. I think it's actually called I. If you can see there, it's just really hard to see because it's just a little line, but that's I switch. And I think from factory default, it comes with the I switch. And of course, I mentioned this in some of the other videos, but instead of selecting it and then scrolling through all your different settings, which you can do that to see which different buttons, once you select it, whatever switch you toggle is automatically going to assign it to that switch. So in this case, I'm going to toggle A switch, and you can see that it automatically selected A switch. It comes up, but you also have to select it or set that as A switch, and so that means you have to press it. There are also master override, so then you can set up override where you don't really need to push the switch, and then you can just take over control. There's a lot of different options. I really like this software or firmware, whatever you call it. I like that option because it gives you a lot more settings and adjustments and things you can do where you couldn't do on the older or with just a wired trainer setup. So anyway, that's pretty much how all that is supposed to be set up. This gives you control. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to go to bind, and then we're going to bind this master or instructor controller to the student controller. And so this is the next process, how we're going to do that. I will just put out this note here because I found this a little bit confusing. As you roll the dial to the right, you can see it goes from top to bottom and left to right. And then when you're scrolling it back the other direction, it skips over bind. And I found this a little bit confusing. That's why I'm taking a minute to explain in the video. But I found it confusing when I first was trying to set it up, that it would skip over it. But the way that you get to it is actually go up to instructor, standard instructor, and then back down to bind. So it goes from list down to bind, standard instructor, and goes down to all these settings. And of course, there's these settings here that you can adjust different stuff. Pilot link instructor, you can set it over on FPV if you're using it for different ports and that kind of stuff, or you can turn it off. So we're going to leave it on standard instructor. Maybe I should have mentioned that because this was already set up. I was tinkering around with it before the video, but there we go. And then we're going to go back and we're going to go to bind. So this is a step that's going to be a little difficult because I need more than one hand, but basically what we're going to do is when we put that in bind mode, then I'm going to turn this DXS transmitter on, and I'm going to be holding the bind switch just as though you were going to bind it to the airplane. But instead, these two transmitters are going to bind to each other. So let me see if I can do that. There's bind mode. I'm going to hold this button down on the DXS. I'm binding it. There it is, and you should see this on your screen. DSXM 11 or something like that, I think it said. And then they are hooked up. So let me go over here and we're going to put power to our airplane and we'll test everything out. So it's really nice if you have an extra person to set this up. It's really inconvenient to set up trainer mode by yourself, but generally you're not going to be setting up trainer mode by yourself, so it's nice if you have somebody that can hang on to your aircraft. So our aircraft is initializing. We'll set a wheel chalk in here just to make sure it's not going to roll forward real easy. And then we show you, so we have elevator, ailerons, rudder. See if we have throttle. Take our throttle cut off. There's that. And then here is our student controller, and it has no control because right now it's not activated. So I put this on a toggle switch, and the reason I put it on a toggle switch is because I'm trying to balance everything in the camera and show you guys how to do it. I'm kind of shooting Lone Ranger today, but I put it on the A switch, and the toggle switch meaning that I can just kick it over, and then I don't have to sit there and hold that transmitter. And then now the student controller works, and it has full control. And then of course I have throttle cut set up on this, and I think safe is not going to be able to be changed on the student controller. So hopefully guys, that gives you a little bit of explanation there on how to set that up. And if you need to, you can go back and play the video again, rewind it again, and look at the settings. And so you still should have telemetry on the master controller or on the instructor controller, and then that just took over again. So the way I have it set up is that even though I have it set up on a switch, let me go back to that setting. I'll show you exactly what that setting does again. Let's scroll down to system setup, and we're going to scroll down to trainer and wireless trainer. So this down here, master override active, you can turn that on or off. I'll just show you the difference of what it does. So because it's active and I have it on switch A, which I did already show you guys that, we're going to back out of here. And then the master has control, the instructor has full control of it, and then I switched it over to the student because I toggled over the A switch. So then I'm going to set the controller over here. Sorry you guys can't see that too well. Now the student has control, and the student has full control of everything. Let's take that off. And then as soon as, I don't know if I can even show that to you guys. It's a little difficult. So there's the student controller. I just bumped it by accident. So basically what that does, what I'm trying to explain and balance everything in here in the video camera at the same time, is that this has a master override or automatic override. So even though I don't have time to go up and hit that toggle switch, if the student is doing something and it's dangerous, it's about to crash, I don't have to move the switch. I can just automatically touch a button. My transmitter is vibrating, and it tells me that I automatically took control, and I don't have to flip the switch. So if you put it on a toggle switch, if you're flying with a student that doesn't need a whole lot of help, just every once in a great while, you don't want to sit there and hold down your bind switch. That kind of gets old. I've been there, done that. You're holding your bind switch down for like 15-20 minutes while somebody's flying. You can just use the toggle switch, and then they have control. Oops. They have control. But then as soon as I grab the stick on this when I see them doing something dangerous, I don't have to go up here and flip this toggle. I can, but I don't have to. I just move this, and it takes control. Now I'm going to turn the volume up, and I'll show you. We have the volume alert set up. Let's see, here we go. And if you have
95.
If you have the volume turned up and you have alerts set up, or voice, I think it's voice alerts is what it's called, it'll call out your modes.
Flight mode 2, flight mode 1.
So it has the different flight modes. And then also, when I kick this over, it'll tell who's in control.
Student has control. Instructor has control. Student has control. Instructor has control.
So that's kind of cool. So if you don't want the override feature, here's how to turn that off. We're just gonna, oh man, that's so loud. Sorry guys. Here we go. If you don't want that override feature, here's how you can turn that off. So we're gonna go back down to system setup. And we're gonna go down to trainer mode again. And we're gonna go to wireless trainer. And we're gonna go down and turn that master override, which is on the very bottom setting. And we're gonna turn that off. You can turn it on and off by selecting it. So there we are. So now, when the toggle switch is set, it doesn't matter what I do, I can't get control of the airplane until I kick over that toggle switch, and then I have control of it. But the toggle switch and no control for the instructor, and there it is. So when the instructor controller has no control, the student controller does. So, and as I was mentioning earlier, in the DXS radios, which is the smart, there's your telemetry, which shows your battery voltage level. So it just comes up here on this these little illuminator lights. So that is not for the transmitter power. I think the transmitter power is up here, and it will blink red when you need batteries. And I think it'll turn off when your transmitter's not actually transmitting. But I believe that this here is actually your telemetry for your battery voltage while your flight pack while you're flying. So there you go, guys. Hopefully that made a little bit of sense to you. And like I said, there's a plethora of options and features for trainer settings and setting up trainer mode, wireless trainer mode, and then there's of course the wired trainer settings. But a friend, subscriber, was asking, he's like, hey, can you make a video on how to set up wireless buddy box? And I was like, well, yeah, sure, we can do that. So hopefully you find that helpful. And like I said, if you need to refer to anything, feel free to go back, pause the video, rewind it. I think you can put it on like half speed on the playback and pause it and just go through the steps. If you do have any other questions that maybe I forgot to explain in this video, we can do another follow-up video that might be more in-depth, more detailed, or feel free to drop a comment or question in the video, and we'll get to it as soon as we can. So hope you guys enjoyed that. Again, if you like the content, make sure you're subscribed, turn on the bell icon, hit the big thumbs up button, drop a comment or question if you have one, share this video with a friend that you think might enjoy it. I hope you guys have a good Thanksgiving this week, and we'll catch you in the next video. Thanks for watching.